Hi guys, this is homework A2. I hope it helps you. And again, you can still ask questions in class if you need more clarification. So let's get started. Number 35 asks that you find the slope and the y-intercept and then describe the graph. So in order to do that, we need to isolate the y. So we start off by subtracting 2x from both sides. And so that leaves us with negative 3y. And I'll just rearrange the order so that it's in the y equals mx plus b form. And then we divide both sides by negative 3. So we have y equals a negative 2 over a negative 3 right here. When we simplify this part, gives us 2/3 x. And then a 9 over a negative 3 that we see right here leaves us with negative 3. And so from here we see that the slope, the m, is 2/3, and the y-intercept, the b, is negative 3. So m 2/3, y-intercept negative 3. And to describe the graph, because the slope is positive, 2/3, you could just say this line rises from left to right. And that's it. Number 40, same instructions. This time the equation is y equals 12. And we know that y equals 12 is a horizontal line that crosses through the y-axis at 12. And from that we also know that the slope is 0. The y-intercept is 12. Sorry about that. And if you were to, you can describe it simply as, as that. It's a horizontal line that crosses the y-axis at 12. And that's it for this one. Okay, for number 45, it's similar instructions. They want the slope and y-intercept, if possible, but this time they want you to graph the equation. Okay, so notice there is no y, and so we solve for x, and we end up with, you add 2 to both sides. Let me just get the right. Let's change the color then. We're going to add 2. And so we end up with 5x equals 2. Divide by 5. So we have x equals 2/5. So x equals 2/5 is a vertical line. Okay, and we talked about this in class. The slope of a vertical line is undefined. And because it is a vertical line, not on 0, then the y-intercept does not exist. Okay, there is none. So move this over. They want you to graph it. So to graph it, here we have a coordinate plane. I've labeled the axes, x and y, and then the tick marks. So x equals 2/5. I'm going to go, since I used 5 squares for 1, I'm going to go to the second one and graph my line. Now it's probably not going to come out straight because I can't use a ruler on this, but try to follow the graph, the line, and there it is. Okay? So for number 50, they give you the graph of a line, and they mark those 2 points that I have right there. And they also want you to, what they want you to do in this problem is write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form, which is this form right here. Okay? So, we need the slope, and then after that we need to find the y-intercept so that we can write it in the correct form. So let's go ahead and set this up. So I'll start off with this. Let me just mark it here. I'll start off with, it doesn't really matter, I'll start off with this one. So this is going to be my y sub 2, my y sub 1. So let me just put m. So the difference in the y's over the difference in the x's. So -1 minus 3/2 is, well, remember 3/2 is 1.5. So this would be -2.5 in the numerator, which is the same as -5/2. In the denominator, you get 5. And to simplify this, you could think of it a couple ways, but the way I'll show you right now is -5/2 divided by 5 is the same thing as -5/2, like this, divided by 5, which means -5/2 times 1 over 5. So the 5's reduce, and you're left with -1/2. So that's the slope of this line. To find the b, there's a couple of ways. We can use point slope form and then simplify from there, or we can just keep the y-intercept form, this one right here. We could just use this one. Pick a point. I'll probably pick the 4, -1. You could choose -1 3/2 if you'd like, but for this demonstration, I'll just use 4, -1. So the y value is -1. The m, the slope, is -1/2. The x value for that corresponds to the y of -1 is 4. And then we're looking for b. So 4 times -1/2 is -2. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides to isolate the b. 2 minus 1 is 1. Okay, so here's the other piece that we need. So my final answer is going to be y equals -1/2 x plus 1. Okay, so 55, similar to 50, where they want you to write an equation in slope-intercept form for the line that passes through these 2 points. So just like before, we need to find the slope and then the y-intercept. So let's set up the slope. For this one, let's see, 55, let me change this quick. So I'm going to start off with m, m equals 5/4 minus 1/2 divided by 1/2 minus 2. Okay? So in the numerator, we need a common denominator, right? So up here, we need to get the same denominator. So my common denominator is 4, which will convert, let's see, this one, change the color real quick, to, instead of 1/2, we multiply top and bottom by 2/2. Kind of messy. Which is actually 1. Remember how we talked about that in class? 2/2 is 1, right? So, but by using 2/2, it gives us a denominator of 4 for this fraction. So let's go ahead and simplify that. Oops, having trouble with the tab, sorry. So 5/4 minus 2/4, because now this one right here is 2/4. 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 times 2 is 4 in the denominator. So 5/4 minus 2/4 is 3/4. Okay, and then 1/2 minus 2. You can do the same thing that we did up here, where we put this over 1 and then get a common denominator by multiplying the 2 by 2/2, so that we get a common denominator of 2. And so we get 1 minus 4. This here is 4 halves. So 1 minus 4 is negative 3 divided by 2. And then this one can be simplified as 3/4. Now I'll write it again this way, but eventually we're going to skip this step that I'm writing right now. This means this 3/4 is the same thing as 3/4 divided by negative 3 halves, which we know is the same thing as 3/4 times negative 2/3. So this reduces, and so the slope ends up being negative 1/2. And so with that, we go back and use either point 2 1/2 or 1/2 5/4 to solve for B. Now this time, in the previous example, I went straight to the slope-intercept form, but let me use the point-slope form for this one, just to model, we did it in class this way, but just to model it again for you. So I'll use the first point, 2 1/2. So it's y minus 1/2 equals negative 1/2, x minus 2. Okay, so then distribute the negative 1/2, so you have y minus 1/2 equals negative 1/2 x. And then when you distribute here, the negative times the negative becomes positive, and the 1/2 times 2 becomes 1. So 1, then we're going to add a half to leave y by itself. Okay, so I'll just work on the next column over here. So I end up with y equals negative 1/2 x plus, now 1.5, we can write it as 3 halves. And here's the answer. Okay, number 60, same instructions as 55. So we need to find the slope, the y-intercept, to get the equation in slope-intercept form for the line that passes through these 2 points. So again, the order doesn't really matter as to which point you start with. So I'll just let's see. Start with 0.6 minus negative 2.4 divided by negative 8 minus 2. So remember, it doesn't matter which point you start with, but you've got to be consistent. So since I started with the y value of this point, when I do the denominator, I've got to start with the x value of the same point. So I have to start with negative 8, not 2. So 6/10 plus 2 4/10 is 3. And then negative 8 minus 10 is negative 10. Okay, so I could leave it like that, or I could change it to a decimal. Okay, so now I will pick a point and use it to find B. So I will choose this one right here. So I get negative 2.4 equals, because if 2.4 is a decimal, I'll just use the decimal form of the slope, and 0.3, and x is 2 plus b. So right here I get, let me write this down first, negative 6/10, and I'm going to add 6/10 to both sides. So we get negative 1 and 8/10 for B. So the equation would look like this. Y equals negative 3/10 x minus 1 and 8/10. There you have it. All right, for number 65, they want you to